Hey guys! Today we're diving into another truly horrifying case. If you want to support my channel, make sure to subscribe and stay active. It really helps me out. I'd be super grateful for that. Let's get started. Can an ordinary person distinguish someone with serious psychological issues from a regular, well-adjusted individual, or is that something only a trained specialist can do? Some people blend seamlessly into society, appearing charming, driven, and even successful in their chosen fields. The most concerning traits are often a lack of remorse and an inability to empathize with others. But sometimes it's nearly impossible to tell. Are we looking at a charismatic go-getter who climbed the career ladder through sheer determination, or a calculating manipulator capable of ruthless actions without a second thought? The case of Maria Marta Arias shook Argentina with its shocking brutality and the apparent lack of a clear motive. Her husband carried out an act of extreme aggression, turning it into something that resembled a disturbing performance. At first glance, his behavior seemed completely irrational, considering what he did and how he acted throughout the day. However, psychiatric experts had a different opinion. They concluded that the crime was premeditated and that his erratic behavior was nothing more than an act. But was that really the case? Let's take a closer look at this unsettling case. Maria Marta Arias was born on July 14, 1984, in the small town of La Banda, located in Argentina's Santiago del Estero province. She was the youngest of three siblings in the family of Maria Helga Alonso and José Arias. Her father passed away when she was still very young, so she only knew him through family stories and old photographs. Her mother never remarried and dedicated herself entirely to raising her children. Maria Marta grew up with her two older brothers, Juan and Claudio, who were always protective of her. She was an excellent student, calm, humble, well-behaved, and endlessly kind. She had a deep love for animals, dreamed of earning a higher education, and had a natural talent for learning foreign languages. Because of this, Maria Helga enrolled her in English courses at a local university, where she quickly became the top student in her group. As a teenager, Maria Marta was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease known as lupus. She required constant and expensive medical treatment to keep the condition under control. A significant portion of the family's budget went toward her therapy, but her loved ones never hesitated to support her in every way possible. As she grew older, Maria Marta blossomed into a true beauty. She was petite and slender, with long, thick hair and striking light-colored eyes. Delicate and graceful, with an angelic appearance and a kind, open heart, she had a way of captivating people at first sight. However, she remained modest, reserved, and quiet. She had only a few close friends and never pursued romantic relationships. During her English courses at the university, she met a young man named Pablo, and they became friends. However, after her lupus diagnosis, she stopped attending the classes, and their friendship faded over time. They didn't see each other for several years. Now, let's take a moment to talk about Pablo Antonio Amin himself. He was born on April 22, 1983, in La Banda, the same town as Maria Marta. He was the youngest of two children in a well-off family. His parents, Graciela Beatriz Rodriguez and Pablo Amin Sr., owned a successful business and operated several stores. He was raised alongside his older sister, Andrea, later married under the name Brunel. His parents ensured that their children never wanted for anything, and some might say they spoiled them. From a young age, Pablo trained in martial arts and became highly skilled in the sport. He was tall, physically strong, and had a reputation for being aggressive. At the age of 14, he was involved in a tragic incident that led to the loss of another teenager's life. The details of this event were not publicly disclosed, but according to some reports, a conflict escalated into a physical altercation, during which Pablo inflicted injuries on his peer that proved fatal. The teenager's father managed to keep the case from going to trial. He used his connections and paid a substantial sum to the prosecutors, as well as a significant financial settlement to the family of the boy who lost his life. It was well known that Pablo Amin Sr. was deeply devoted to his son and would do anything to protect him, even when it was clear that Pablo was in the wrong. When Pablo's older sister, Andrea, became an adult, she decided to move to the province of Córdoba to continue her education. Not long after, Pablo expressed a desire to join her, and start an independent life. Their parents didn't object, but a few months later, he returned home. He struggled to adjust to life in a new place, and Andrea was unwilling to take responsibility for him. She also confided in their parents that she was deeply unsettled by her brother's behavior. Andrea had good reason to be concerned. During that time, Pablo had started experimenting with banned substances, and his usage quickly escalated. He became even more irritable and aggressive, often losing control of his temper and lashing out at those around him. Before long, he developed a serious dependence on highly addictive substances, and it became clear that he couldn't stop on his own. By the time he turned 17, his parents were desperate and took extreme measures to get him help. They managed, through great effort, to send him to an exclusive private rehabilitation facility. The process was incredibly difficult. Pablo repeatedly relapsed and struggled to break free from his addiction. It took nearly 3 years before doctors finally declared him to be in recovery. After completing treatment, Pablo returned home and decided to get involved in the family business, helping his parents manage their affairs. It seemed like things were finally starting to stabilize, until tragedy struck again. His father passed away suddenly from a heart attack, an event that devastated Pablo and almost caused him to relapse. But this was just the beginning of the hardships the Amin family would face. In 2005, Graciela was in a serious car accident that nearly cost her life. She suffered severe injuries and had to relearn how to walk. With no guarantees from doctors about her recovery, she turned to alternative medicine and began attending church regularly. Pablo stood by her side throughout her journey. One day, while accompanying his mother to a church service, he noticed a familiar face in the crowd, Maria Marta, whom he hadn't seen since they were teenagers. He decided to approach her and strike up a conversation. Maria Marta immediately recognized her childhood friend, and as they talked, it felt as if only days had passed since their last meeting, rather than several years. The two decided to exchange phone numbers to stay in touch. From that moment on, they spoke regularly, sharing long conversations about anything and everything. Before long, Pablo excitedly told his mother that he had found the girl of his dreams and planned to introduce Maria Marta to his family soon. However, despite their frequent conversations, she kept turning down his invitations to go on a date or visit his home. She made it clear that she valued their friendship, but didn't see their relationship as anything more. At the time, Maria Marta was in her 3rd year at the prestigious National University of Santiago del Estero, studying economics. She was one of the top students in her program. In addition to being highly intelligent and ambitious, she was petite, slender, and strikingly beautiful, qualities that never went unnoticed. In comparison, Pablo struggled in many areas. He had dismissed higher education, believing it wasn't necessary for him, and had long abandoned sports due to his past struggles with substance use and an eating disorder that developed as a result. By the time he turned 20, he stood nearly 6.5 feet tall and weighed over 330 pounds. His skin was also affected by severe acne, further damaging his self-esteem. Determined to win Maria Marta's attention, Pablo decided to take drastic action. He turned to highly marketed dietary supplements that promised rapid weight loss, improved skin, and overall wellness. Over 6 months, he lost more than 90 pounds, and his weight continued to drop. In 2005, Pablo finally convinced Maria Marta to go on a date with him. She was surprised by his transformation and complimented his dedication and perseverance. After that, they met a few more times before she eventually accepted his invitation to dinner at his home, where he introduced her to his mother as his girlfriend. From that moment on, their unexpected romance took off, developing quickly. While Pablo's family welcomed Maria Marta with open arms and had no objections to their relationship, the Arias family had an entirely different reaction. Her mother and brothers were immediately unsettled by Pablo, sensing that something was off about him. They repeatedly urged her to take a closer look at his behavior and end the relationship before it was too late. But Maria Marta, deeply infatuated, refused to listen to their concerns. Pablo was so inspired by his own weight loss success that he decided to sign a contract with the supplement company, becoming their official representative. To promote the products, he used his own before and after photos, shared personal testimonials about his experience, and attributed almost miraculous effects to the supplements. Sales skyrocketed as Pablo aggressively recruited new customers and employees for his personal sales network, which grew rapidly and brought in increasing profits. The company operated as a multi-level marketing business, and he quickly realized that this was what he wanted to do, and what he was exceptionally good at. He even pressured his relatives and friends into taking the supplements, convincing them that these products were a near-universal remedy for all health concerns. The most troubling and dangerous part was that he persuaded Maria Marta to stop taking the medications prescribed for her lupus and instead switch entirely to the supplements. She trusted him completely and soon started following the regimen he put together for her. At the same time, Pablo also convinced Maria Marta to sign a contract with the company and become a representative. Together, they promoted the so-called miracle pills and shared their own experiences at conferences, presenting themselves as living proof of the product's effectiveness. However, after discontinuing her prescribed treatment, Maria Marta's health did not improve. On the contrary, it noticeably worsened. Despite this, their business continued to thrive. They were making good money, could afford a spacious house, bought 2 luxury cars, and, in general, wanted for nothing. In 2007, they held a lavish outdoor wedding ceremony in a picturesque park near the water. Although Maria Marta's family strongly disapproved of the relationship, they attended the wedding. However, as it later turned out, the couple never officially registered their marriage. They simply exchanged vows and rings without any legal documentation. Under Pablo's influence, Maria Marta gradually distanced herself from her family, rarely visiting her mother and brothers, limiting their communication to phone calls. Her relatives believed this was partly due to her declining health, as she worked tirelessly with almost no breaks while refusing medical treatment in favor of supplements. She looked increasingly unwell and felt just as bad, but she continued pushing herself to keep up with their business. By the end of 2007, Pablo and Maria Marta had become the top-performing sales representatives in their province. They were essentially the faces of the company in Santiago del Estero, held up as examples for others to follow. However, around this time, tensions reportedly started growing between them. Their relationship took a turn as they began competing against each other in business, each striving to be recognized as the best representative in their region. At first, it seemed like a joke, a friendly competition, or even a sports-like rivalry. However, according to those close to the couple, tension between Pablo and Maria Marta had been steadily growing. Despite this, they continued making joint appearances at conferences, enthusiastically sharing their personal experiences with the supplements. In public, they appeared to be a happy and successful team. Reports suggest that Pablo was extremely possessive, jealous to an obsessive degree, and attempted to control every aspect of Maria Marta's life. She was rarely seen without him and had cut off almost all outside communication, even from her own family, which deeply concerned them. The couple traveled constantly across different cities in the province, working to boost sales, promote new products, and recruit more people into their network. But despite Maria Marta being by his side almost all the time, Pablo's jealousy didn't subside. He reportedly even resented his own friends and colleagues if they interacted with her. His paranoia led to frequent conflicts, and at times he seemed ready to resort to physical confrontations. On October 27, 2007, the couple planned to attend a major company conference in the neighboring province of Tucuman. This was a highly anticipated event, with top sales managers from across the country in attendance. They decided to drive there and invited a few colleagues to join them on the trip. Among those traveling with them were Luis Ramon Paz and his wife, as well as Lucas Bodero. None of them noticed anything unusual in Pablo or Maria Marta's behavior during the journey. The drive took nearly 5 hours, and throughout the trip, the couple seemed in good spirits. They chatted casually with their friends, joked around, listened to music, and appeared completely at ease. Upon arrival, they checked into a pre-booked hotel, dropped off their belongings, changed clothes, and then headed to the conference venue. Wanting to make a strong impression, Pablo dressed in a formal suit with a blazer. However, he failed to consider the region's high temperatures and humidity. During his presentation, he was visibly sweating, stumbling over his words, and frequently drinking water. It was clear that he was physically uncomfortable, yet he stubbornly refused to remove his jacket. After finishing his speech, Pablo took a seat in the audience. Only a few minutes later, a heated altercation broke out between him and Bodero, one that nearly escalated into a physical confrontation. Witnesses later claimed that Pablo was overtaken by jealousy, believing his friend had been overly friendly with Maria Marta. Consumed by anger, he lost control, but the situation was de-escalated before it could spiral further. Both men were ultimately escorted out of the building. Maria Marta followed her husband, trying to calm him down. Pablo insisted that they needed to leave immediately, so they got into their car. However, after driving only a few hundred feet, he suddenly pulled over, got out, and started walking toward the city's main square. Many bystanders later recalled seeing the couple that day. Pablo, towering and broad-shouldered, was practically running, while Maria Marta, small and delicate in comparison, struggled to keep up, pleading with him to stop. His behavior was erratic. He constantly glanced over his shoulder as if someone was chasing him, his expression shifting between anger, fear, and confusion. At one point, Pablo began shouting that someone was trying to harm him, that he was in danger, and that they needed to hide. He appeared completely unhinged, while his wife seemed lost, unsure of how to handle the situation. In his panic, he suddenly jumped onto a bus, claiming he needed to escape. Maria Marta followed him, only for them to get off at the next stop, board another bus, and repeat this bizarre pattern several times before eventually ending up back at the square. By 5 p.m., Pablo stormed into the cathedral located in the square, disrupting an ongoing service. He loudly declared that he could hear a voice speaking to him, shoved past a line of people waiting for a blessing, and demanded to be baptized immediately. The priest, taken aback but trying to remain calm, placed a hand on Pablo's forehead and offered him a sip of holy water. This unusual moment was captured by a photographer who had been at the church taking pictures of a baptism ceremony. After leaving the cathedral, Pablo's behavior became even more erratic. He changed directions repeatedly, muttered to himself, and finally approached a police vehicle, demanding to be arrested. Officers, noting his disturbing behavior, took him to the station for questioning. There, he immediately started pitching his supplements, insisting that the officers should buy them. Though they initially laughed it off, Pablo refused to stop and eventually lay down on the floor, demanding to be locked up. Instead, authorities decided he should be taken to a hospital for evaluation. At the emergency room, doctors examined Pablo but found no physical health issues. However, his mental state was another matter entirely. He became agitated, knocking over a tray of surgical instruments in a fit of hysteria. Despite his outburst, the hospital staff did not deem him a risk and decided to discharge him rather than admit him to the psychiatric unit. Maria Marta arrived shortly after, picked him up, and together they returned to their hotel. As they walked through the hotel bar, the couple briefly greeted Luis Ramon Paz and his wife before heading up to their room on the 5th floor. Once inside, Maria Marta took a shower and then lay down in bed. Pablo, still drenched in sweat, stripped off his soaked clothes and lay beside her. Just as Maria Marta began to drift off to sleep, Pablo suddenly sat up. Without warning, he pressed his knee against her chest, pinning her down, and his hands wrapped tightly around her throat. Pablo pressed down on his wife with his full weight, and within a minute, she stopped moving. After that, he took a scalpel, one he had stolen earlier from the hospital, and carried out a gruesome act. He made precise incisions, removed her eyelids, and carefully placed her eyes on the pillow without damaging them. Then, he made several deep, deliberate cuts across her body before dragging her lifeless form by the hair into the hotel hallway. He continued pulling Maria Marta's body down the staircase, all the way to the 1st floor, before hotel staff intervened and restrained him. Authorities were immediately called, and emergency responders arrived shortly after. Pablo was in a highly agitated state, acting erratically and uncontrollably. Given his size, standing close to 6.5 feet tall and weighing over 260 pounds, no one could physically restrain him. It was ultimately decided that he needed to be taken to a psychiatric facility. There, medical staff were forced to sedate him with a strong dose of medication as he remained violent and unmanageable. Tragically, there was nothing that could be done for Maria Marta. The autopsy revealed severe injuries, including deep lacerations from the scalpel. Additionally, Her chest had been crushed. Almost all of her ribs were broken, and her lung was punctured. However, the official cause of death was ruled as mechanical asphyxiation. From the very beginning, it appeared that Pablo had lost touch with reality and had no awareness of his actions, leading to speculation that he might not be held legally responsible for them. He reinforced this perception by repeatedly claiming he heard voices. According to Argentina's criminal code at the time, he could not be charged with premeditated homicide under aggravated circumstances unless psychological and psychiatric evaluations determined he was mentally competent. For several months, Pablo was held in a high-security psychiatric ward, where windows were barred and patients were closely monitored. Initially, he remained aggressive and volatile. Then, without warning, he appeared to undergo a drastic change. He declared that he had found faith, requested a Bible, and spent hours in prayer. In the spring of 2008, a team of psychiatrists and forensic specialists assigned to his case reached a firm conclusion. Pablo had been fully aware of his actions and had deliberately feigned insanity to avoid a severe prison sentence. His behavior was not spontaneous but carefully orchestrated. Investigators determined that Pablo began acting erratically hours before the crime to establish a pattern of instability, ensuring that as many people as possible would witness his apparent mental breakdown. He had also planned the theft of the scalpel from the hospital in advance, and the way he staged the crime scene suggested he wanted it to appear ritualistic. However, experts pointed out a critical detail. A person experiencing a genuine psychotic break would not have had the precision required to remove the eyes so cleanly without damaging them. His actions were controlled, calculated, and entirely intentional. Pablo was transferred from the hospital to a regular prison, where he was formally charged with premeditated homicide under aggravated circumstances. He remained there while awaiting trial. Despite his continued attempts to feign insanity, his efforts proved unsuccessful. The early court proceedings were nothing short of a spectacle. Pablo was escorted into the courtroom under heavy guard, with a team of 10 tactical officers ensuring his security. His behavior was defiant and erratic. He interrupted the prosecutor to ask for a cigarette, mocked the witnesses, made obscene gestures, and swayed back and forth in his seat. He repeatedly insisted that he had no control over his actions, claiming he was obeying the voices in his head. However, the only person who truly seemed to believe him was his mother, Graciela. She maintained that her son had loved Maria Marta deeply and would never have harmed her if he had been in his right mind. In September 2009, Pablo was found guilty of premeditated homicide with aggravating factors. The court determined that his actions were driven by obsessive jealousy, business rivalry, and a twisted desire to inflict harm on his wife. He was sentenced to life in prison, though this ruling would later be reevaluated. While incarcerated, Pablo managed to start a romantic relationship with a woman who frequently visited him, convinced of his innocence. When that relationship eventually ended, he began seeing another woman who had originally been visiting his cellmate. They quickly became involved, and in 2017, the couple legally married. A year later, his wife gave birth to their daughter. During his time in prison, Pablo joined the church choir, learned to play the violin, wrote poetry and songs for his wife, and even attempted to pursue higher education, though his request was denied. Displaying exemplary behavior, he and his attorney began pushing for the possibility of early release. In 2023, the court granted him permission to leave prison twice a month for a few hours to spend time at home with his wife and daughter. However, the possibility of full parole will not be considered until 2042. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means a lot to me, and you can help my channel grow by hitting that like button, dropping a comment, and sharing this video. Your engagement really makes a difference. See you soon.